Thank you. From a micro standpoint, obviously we're getting various testimony we had earlier today. Certainly discussions around minimum wage always revolve around these issues. But we're going, as you said earlier, into unexplored territory. And so do you have a sense, I mean, as an economist, what are our expectations? We have experiences in smaller incremental increases, and certainly in a more, I guess, controlled manner, and not that this isn't, but what are our expectations? Is it fair to expect that if we had a certain expectation of a smaller increase, that a larger increase would lead to a proportionately larger disruption?
And I think we don't know, and that's why economists are quiet on this, or the ones who have come out in favor of increases in the past are not willing to make that statement now. We don't know if the function is monotonically increasing, if it's a geometric thing, when we think about the impacts, a lot of the conversation gets focused on employment and whether we're going to have employment impacts. For the smaller increases we've seen, I might be on a little different part of the spectrum than earlier speakers to say that I think the evidence is that unemployment, there hasn't been the significant impacts that have always been warned of. But again, those are smaller increases, and we don't know on this large of a scale. I think what we do know is that employing, the number of hours you employ workers is not the only channel by which you can react to the higher wages. And so employers do react through increasing the efficiency of their operations. So there have been studies that say if you raise the minimum wage, then a lot of employers find it costly to lay off workers or to pull back, or they can't, as people have said earlier, you can't do business if you don't have employees. So what you need to do is get smarter in how you work. We have seen evidence on the positive sides of minimum wage increases, of increases in reductions in tenure, reductions in turnover, that in the case of San Francisco Airport, which is one of the micro studies that's been done, there was much higher retention rates or reduction in turnover rates of employees within the airport. So we know that if you increase wages X amount, it does impact, it reduces turnover costs for employers. So that's another way that they absorb the higher cost, is they have lower costs to dealing with turnover. What we don't know is if it's a 50% or 100% increase in the minimum wage, what does that mean vis-a-vis a 10%? And that's the uncharted part of this.
Wow. And so, what do you suggest? and that's really the point. We're heading into areas that we've never seen, and we don't have any models to be able to go back and say, well, it happened this way here, other than speculation.
Right. And I think we do have windows of opportunity, right? So being able to look at, right now we see changes being rolled in already, right, by executive order. How quickly can we gear up to understand for the different regions in the state, for the different employers, for the nonprofits versus for-profits, how they're reacting to any of these? What is the impact? Typically when we talk about turnover rates, you look at a yearly cycle. So we should know within 12 months of a new increase coming in how quickly turnover changed or didn't change as a starting point. So I would say we want to be ramping up and intensifying the study and understanding on a faster pace with the little bits of experience that we do have as things start to go one place or another, so that you have then information so you can start thinking about course correction or either ramping up steeper or making things more gradual.
No, I understand and I appreciate it. You know, one of the examples that is sometimes given is that, you know, obviously the business is going to have to absorb the increase. They're not necessarily going to immediately start laying people off, but they will immediately start looking for those efficiencies.
Yes.
So whether it's replacing a person with a kiosk or an iPad, or whether it's some other means of cutting costs, the business will eventually readjust to absorb those additional costs. But the initial reaction, obviously, is they're going to absorb it, typically. Is that fair?
Yes, and in two different ways. In the case of nonprofits or businesses where you don't have a price you can increase, you have to absorb it all, right? In the case of being a business or an employer where you have a product or service to sell, you can pass some along into price increases. So again, there's where we see increases in the minimum wage being rolled into for-profit businesses where prices can be increased, we can start to see how quickly prices may be changing and how much is being passed on to consumers and how much is being absorbed internally.
And there's a real concern. You know, we'll have some representatives from not-for-profits will be testifying hopefully shortly. And one of the concerns is if you don't have the ability to absorb it, if you don't have reserves, you don't have the ability to pass those costs on to someone else. There is only one alternative, and that's a very difficult thing, and it's a conversation we're going to have.
I think as businesses grow, so there's also how you stagger what you expect from your employees as you grow is another slight tweak on that, right? So as you double your business, if you figure out how to get your workers to be more productive, you don't have to double your workforce, right? So it's not that you're necessarily going to lay off workers or replace them with computers. You can, and there's an interesting study in Florida of some restaurant owners looking at impacts with minimum wage, where the expectations they have of their workers went up. Yeah, so they expect them, if I'm paying you 15, then you know what? I don't need to stay here myself and close down the store because I'm now expecting you to do that. So there's channels of increasing their, the performance expectations, redesigning the way the business runs, and then there's also perhaps using technology as an efficient. So it's not automatic that workers will be replaced with machines to come up with efficiencies. You can reorganize operations and improve training and other things. So I think the very important point that has come up a couple times is how does workforce development and training need to come in tandem with this? Because if you improve the talent and the skills of those workers, the $15 an hour is less of a burden, so to speak, right? It's less regulatory if the natural market wage is closer to that, and it's closer to that if we can build up the skill set.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just one interesting question. I wasn't here for your testimony, but I read it quickly. You raised a point in my thinking in the terms of the efficiency of the workforce. Obviously, you're going to want to get more out of your workers, right? So you want them to be more productive, so this way you don't have to hire someone else. Have you seen, or has any research been done on whether or not employers might shift them into the salaried or independent contractor status, or the managerial title, so to avoid the payment of overtime as the wage rate goes up? So take me out of the standard wage an hour division and move me to, I'm a manager now. So now I work a 40-hour week and I'm capped and I don't earn any overtime, or I don't work a 40, I work whatever you tell me I have to work. Have you seen that happening?
I would have to look to see if anyone's looked at that. I know that from the employer perspective and the compensation perspective, you have all of those federal guidelines changing as well. And so one question is whether the $15 an hour is as high as it would have been if we hadn't just jacked up all the regulations on the salary versus the hourly pay, right? So because now we've raised the bar for making someone a manager and avoiding hourly, it's sort of like that cost's already gone up. And so if you think about where the minimum wage sits vis-a-vis that, you know, again, this isn't a bad time to be considering this increase because we're making all these other adjustments that are making some of those loopholes perhaps more difficult because we're raising the standard you have to meet in order to move someone off hourly. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Senator Perkins.
Oh, no, thank you.
Doctor, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for your patience.
No worries.
Next up, we have Ted Patrikas, President and CEO of the Retail Council for the State of New York. Ted, good afternoon. Let me start by apologizing for let me start by apologizing for you know, the shuffling of the order. I know that you've been waiting patiently, but I was trying to get every perspective here and certainly didn't mean to.
I understand. No, and I understand too that we have a bit of I'm not sure that it's, I don't want to say unpredictable anymore. I think people can pretty much predict where we are going to end up on this issue. So I do appreciate the opportunity that you're giving us today to talk about the retail industry's position. It's been called nuanced. You have our written testimony. Sure. I could treat you to a word-for-word slow reading of it, but I won't. It's my New Year's resolution.
You're a good man. Thank you.
I'm just gonna wing it. But Senator, you said something at the outset of the hearing today that I found very interesting, and I think really represents the way that the retail industry in New York, and I really can speak only for the retailers in New York. I know that there's some concern that the position that we take on this issue here in New York is something that would be translated to go into other states, and that's just not the case. I speak only for the Retail Council of New York State. But what you said was the need to take a half step back and take a broader view, which really is the position that the council, on behalf of its members and as instructed by its members, large and small, has taken on this issue really for more than a decade. So how do we look at this? I think we agree with many of the concerns, if not all the concerns, that some of our colleagues on the business side have expressed, in that a too precipitous increase, if it's done in one fell swoop or in 3 or 4 smaller swoops, that a minimum wage increase to $15 an hour is something that we just can't sustain. And the factors that render that so, I mean, just today, what you'll hear when you leave here, the news came out today that Macy's is closing 5 stores in New York because Christmas sales for brick and mortar retail this year, particularly in the Northeast where the weather wasn't particularly Christmassy, were horrible. They were down a significant percentage. Unless you're Amazon.com, I don't think you did as well as you might have wanted to do this year. On the other hand, we also recognize the call from the proponents for an increase in the minimum wage about their needs and wants. And these are the folks who shop in our stores and who we want to shop in our stores. And we think that there is some merit in the studies that have come out to say that if people earn more in the minimum wage, the first thing they're going to do is spend it on the things that they need and the things that they want. So we do have to look at this from both perspectives, as an employer, as a business entity in the state of New York, but also as somebody who's serving the public, the general public, the shopping public. And what I'm pleased is that Governor Cuomo last week asked me in my role at the Retail Council to be part of the Governor Mario Cuomo Campaign for Economic Justice, which we accepted, not to endorse anything specifically, but to endorse and to show appreciation for participation in the conversation, as we appreciate the ability to do this today with you and with your colleagues. So I think going forward in this legislative session, I do not envy you and your colleagues in the legislature, because on this side of the desk, as you mentioned a few minutes ago, you're going to have this stack of studies that says no, and you're going to have a similar stack on this side that says yes. How do you choose? I don't know, and I think what we're here to do is really try to work with you, with your colleagues in the Assembly, with the executive, and with our members to try to figure out a way that follows. Actually, what I should say, one last thought, is last year, as you know, we endorsed the executive budget proposal that the governor put forward for an increase in the minimum wage. I think it would have taken us to $10.50 and $11.50. And we saw a lot of sense in that, because it was something that we thought over that 2-year period was something that businesses could plan for and something that we could sustain. I think it's that spirit that we hope to go into this year with, and I think that's why the governor asked us to be a part of the campaign that you've heard about. And where that leads us, I think, is there are many roads to yes, and I do hope that we can be a part of that.
I certainly appreciate that. Your role with the foundation, is it to be part of the I guess the deliberative I guess or deliberate and recommend? Is there a report that will be produced?
I don't think so. I think it's more, at least based on my experience on Monday, which was something I had never attended, which was the rally to kick it off. It seems, a push, a fight for 15 is what the hashtag is, and it's the one that's really caught flame all over the country. I think what our role, the way that I see it as, is the ability to take, at least from the retail industry's perspective, some of the concerns that our small and large members, because the Retail Council does represent, we represent the whole gamut of the industry, from the largest stores right down to the mom and pops. Those stores are represented on the board of directors, to whom I answer. And it's been very interesting talking with them, because you do hear the concerns of small business, but a number of the small retailers that are members of the Retail Council have said, well, if this is done correctly, if that curve to whatever that end number isn't too steep, if it's something we can sustain, then let's have that conversation. And I think that's what my role is.
No, I appreciate it. But is that end number 15, or is it something else?
Well, like you've said several times this morning, we haven't seen that proposal yet. Let's assume it's 15. Let's assume it's 15. And let's assume it mirrors that the fast food wage board approved. And it's an interesting part of that too, because in some of our stores, there are fast food establishments inside the store. So you're looking at the potential for a bifurcated wage scale inside a building, where you're sitting there going, God, here I am at the register. I sure do wish I was over there, doing whatever is happening in the fast food place, because I may be making more. Mm-hmm. That's kind of hard to get through. So,
or the register in the fast food portion making more than the register in the retail portion.
Exactly.
Same job.
Same job.
Two different scales.
Two different scales.
But again, you
Yes.
mentioned that part of your hopefully your role in being part of this initiative is to help steer how
Yes.
this will be implemented.
Yes.
How would you like to see it implemented? How would the Retail Council like to see this implemented? And if it is going to be implemented, how would you suggest?
I think there's a couple keys to that. It's a great question, Senator. If this were to be implemented, slow and steady, which is reflective of what we supported in 2011 and again last year, both of the things. And I think it was 2006 when it was done. I lose track of time now because I've been here for 30 years, and it's like I'm starting to lose the dates. But slow and steady, and something that we can manage, simply because so many New Yorkers of all age come to retail for that first job experience, for the part-time work, for the job training that we hope they stay with us and use, but they may move on and go elsewhere. So we still need to be able to provide those jobs. We still need to be able to provide goods and services to people in a competitive way, because as I mentioned with these store closings, and it won't just be this one brand, you know, competition is worldwide now. We can't just raise prices. But you can build in. So how do you build that in? Slow and steady. I do think that there's always room for a training wage. I know that's something that's fallen off the table in years past. But if a retailer is going to take, particularly a small business, that's where I got my start. We were talking about where people get their start. I learned how to mix paint in Cooperstown. And, you know, that's how I learned how to run a cash register and not make it, the green paint sold as the black paint. It's, you know, that's where you learn those skills that translate into, well, this.
Slow and steady.
Yes.
What is that? I mean, because we have, obviously, some proposals that are out there, although
Yeah.
not the proposal for a statewide or a city wage increase.
Yes, sir.
So taking past and assuming it's prologue, taking what was done for state workers, what was done for SUNY workers, what was done for the fast food workers,
Yeah.
if we were to use that same model, does that fall within your definition of slow and steady?
No, actually, and I thank you for putting it in that way. There are a number of our member stores who are very concerned that even that is too precipitous a climb to sustain. You know, that there comes a point, and I'm not an economist either. I'm a paint mixer and a lobbyist, so I'm not quite sure how to do the math, but there's a point where the wages under the model that we're talking about now actually surpass what a company would be able to sustain. Now, there may be some, and there are retailers who are saying, well, wait a minute, I now have to worry about competing in the same job market with the fast food marketplace, where people may go, and I might lose some of my good workers over to there. The other phrase that I've heard today is this is a multi-dimensional issue, and the longer I talk here, the more dimensions I'm adding to it myself, because these are the things that retailers worry about. And they look at this and they think, okay, how do we respond to what the public is asking for? I mean, the same public opinion polls that put this issue at the top, and it's very popular, they're the same folks who shop in our stores. And we're running those polls every day. Who's in, who's not, how are our sales, what's going on? We need to respond to them in a constructive way. And I think doing that and responding to the call for an increase in the minimum wage, like I've said, I do think it can be done as long as it's a way that the retailers can sustain it. And I think as we see these proposals come out, and let's assume it comes out next week, then we'll be able to comment a little more directly on the impact as it will relate to the stores, small and large, who we represent.
So closer to what was done in the past.
Yeah.
This one seems to be more precipitous.
There are a couple of steps in it where I believe it's $1 a year, and that's a little steeper than we've done. You know, in the past it's been at that 75 cents an hour range, and in an industry, and we have close to 1 million employees. You know, and when you're talking about stores, small or large, trying to really absorb that quickly, that money's got to come from somewhere. Those prices have to go up, and then suddenly we're all back to whatever.com, and we're not shopping in the stores in New York because the prices went up too fast.
So even for large retailers, there is a
Yeah.
point where that increase is going to affect their ability to be competitive or even to stay open.
Indeed. Yes.
I appreciate it.
Sure.
Senator Spina.
Thank you. Thank you, Ted,
Pleasure.
for your testimony on this and for your support on the overall issue. You know, most of the representatives of the business community generally come out against it, but as you pointed out, it's a very multidimensional, complicated issue for employers as well. I've heard today several times the question is, why 15? Well, think the ship has sailed on that. I don't
I
think
would
we should be
agree with
debating
that.
it anymore, because once the $15 per hour was established for the fast food industry, which is a subsection of the low-wage workforce, it makes it very difficult to walk it back for any other set of the part of the low-wage or
Yes.
entry-level workforce. I can't imagine that we would end this year with someone delivering a pizza for a fast food chain earning $15 an hour and someone delivering childcare earning something less. Do you think that's a possibility?
I would have to agree,
Thanks.
Senator, that the 15, and our members have said, you know, where'd the 15 come from? Well, it was an effectively meted out campaign to make that the number that stuck. You could wish it away. I wish the Mets had won the World Series last
Right.
year, you know.
So
but-
I think we all established that whatever we do going forward, $15 an hour is the start. It's certainly, we're not going to roll it back to $13 or, you know, some other thing with a peg to inflation. So I think we should all start wrapping our heads around the idea that $15 is going to be what the minimum wage will be if we adopt it. You know, it's
That's-
assuming we can come to some agreement and the governor gives us a proposal that we can all get behind. But on the retail side, you made an interesting point that you guys are kind of betwixt and between.
Yes.
Because while you'll have to absorb the increased cost, you benefit the most out of the increase because people then turn around and spend that money in Macy's or CVS or Duane Reade or whatever merger is today. I don't know, it's Duane Reade, Walgreens, CVS, all on one roof. But you actually will benefit from it as well. So it puts you in an interesting position. Are there any other sectors of the business community that you think are similarly affected that way?
Well, that's a question that I've thought a lot about over the years whenever we've had this conversation about the minimum wage, really about any issue that affects the workforce, the people who not just work in our stores, the people who we seek to employ and want to be able to employ, but the people who work elsewhere and then we want them to come in and shop. You know, we've got to be very careful about that because I think I would say retail and all its manifestations, whether it's just the clothing merchants and the hardware stores, car dealers, whatever. Let's think of anything retail, restaurants. We are the face of that amorphous thing called the business community. You know who the retailer is, and I think that's why we do have to really kind of sail the boat down I've been told a couple of times over the past couple of years that our position on this issue is very nuanced. Like that's a bad thing, you know, and perhaps nuance is bad, but I think, Mr. Chairman, I think your point that we have to take a step back and really look at this from a broader angle is the angle that the Retail Council has chosen to take a look at this, and it's a tricky place.
Yes, it is.
The people, you know, it's the middle of the road, but boy, stand in the middle of the thruway. It's got trucks in both directions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Ted, thank you.
Mr.
Thanks very
Chairman,
much.
thank you.
Good to see you, and thanks for
Great
participating.
to see you. Happy New Year.
You as well. Thank you.